It felt like the ground beneath me had just been ripped away. One simple conversation was all it took to shake the foundation of everything I thought I knew about my family. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood there, listening to my husband explain, in a voice that wavered with guilt, how our younger sister was pregnant and that he was the father. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls pressing against my skin as I struggled to keep my composure. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, each one more impossible than the last. How had we gotten here? How had I not seen this coming? I glanced over at my younger sister, who stood by the door, her eyes downcast, avoiding my gaze. She was just 22, a sweet, innocent girl who had never once shown any sign of being capable of such a betrayal. But there she was, pregnant and alone, facing a future she never planned for. And yet, my husband, my partner, was standing there, insisting that we support her, that we bring her into our home. "She needs us," he said. "She's scared and overwhelmed. We're the only family she has left." But what about me? What about us? The vows we made? The life we built together? How did that fit into this mess? As I stood there, staring at the man I once trusted with my entire heart, I realized this wasn't just about supporting my sister anymore. It was about choosing whether to forgive or to walk away, whether to continue living the life we'd built or to face a new, uncertain reality. This was only the beginning of a journey I never could have imagined. It wasn't just the pregnancy that hurt. It was everything that led up to this moment. I felt betrayed, not only by my husband, but by my sister, who had always been more like a daughter to me than a sibling. We had grown up together, shared secrets, laughed until we cried, and supported each other through every twist and turn in life. I never once imagined that the person who would hurt me the most would be her, yet here I was, standing on the edge of a decision that could tear my family apart. When my husband first suggested bringing her into our home, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. We'd been married for nearly 5 years. We'd built a life, together, our little family, our friends, our routines. I thought I knew him inside and out, that we shared the same values, the same understanding of loyalty and commitment. But this was a betrayal that cut deeper than anything I could have ever imagined. I couldn't even look at him without feeling that sickening twist of disgust in my gut. "What exactly are you asking of me?" I asked him, my voice low, the hurt creeping into my words, even though I tried so hard to keep it in check. "Do you want me to just pretend this didn't happen? That it's all okay because she's pregnant?" He shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what I want, but I can't just leave her out there, alone. She needs us. She's a kid, really, and she doesn't know how to deal with this. I can't let her go through this by herself." His words felt like knives being driven deeper into my chest. I wanted to scream, to shout at him for his weakness, his lack of foresight. How could he be so blind to what this meant? Didn't he see how this was ruining everything we had built? But even as the anger bubbled up inside of me, a part of me couldn't help but feel sorry for my sister. I knew the pressure she must have been under, pregnant, alone, terrified about how she would navigate this unexpected chapter of her life. We weren't just talking about a mistake. We were talking about her future, the future of a child that neither of us had anticipated. And yet, no matter how much empathy I had for her, it didn't change the fact that the man I had married was the one who had created this mess. As I turned to my younger sister, my heart softened just a little. She wasn't looking at me. Instead, she was staring at her feet, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. She looked like a child, like the girl I had always taken care of, but she was standing there as the woman who had shattered the trust between us. I wanted to be angry at her, to tell her how hurt I was, but all I could manage was a cold silence. I wasn't sure what to say to her anymore. "You don't have to do this, I said to her finally, my voice breaking the silence in the room. "You don't have to stay here. You can go somewhere else. We can find another solution." She lifted her eyes to meet mine, and there was a vulnerability in her expression that I had never seen before. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to do. He said I can't keep the baby if I don't have a place to stay. And I don't want to disappoint anyone. I just need someone to help me." I swallowed hard, feeling a surge of sympathy for her, despite the betrayal I felt. How had things gotten so complicated? How had the one person I thought I could count on turned out to be the very one I had to watch out for? Of course, Will. "Help," my husband interjected quickly, stepping in between us. "I know it's not ideal, but she needs us right now. We can't leave her in the lurch." I wanted to protest, to tell him that he couldn't just brush aside the reality of what had happened, but I felt too exhausted. What was the point of arguing? Everything felt so heavy, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find the right words to express the depths of my anger and hurt. So instead, I turned inward. I began to think about the dynamics of my relationship with my husband and sister. In many ways, it felt like a betrayal, not just of me, but of the trust we had built over the years. But at the same time, I had to acknowledge that my sister needed help. And maybe my husband had good intentions, however misguided they were. Still, there was something unsettling about how quickly he was willing to sweep the situation under the rug. Was it because of guilt? Or because he genuinely believed he was doing the right thing? I didn't know. I couldn't know. What I did know was that I couldn't make a decision in the heat of the moment. I needed time to process, to understand how this would change the dynamics of our family, our lives, and what it would mean for me moving forward. But as I stood there, trying to piece everything together in my mind, one thing was clear: things could never go back to how they were. The first few days after my sister moved in were a blur of emotions I couldn't quite process. I tried to go about my daily routine, pretending like nothing had changed, but it felt impossible. Every time I passed by the guest room where she was staying, I felt a pang of discomfort. It was like a constant reminder that everything I knew about my life had been shattered. The echo of my husband's words, "She needs us," reverberated in my mind, but the deeper truth seemed to gnaw at me. We needed support too. And yet, there we were, playing the role of caregivers, when it felt like the weight of the world was crashing down on me. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, questioning everything. My husband, who had once been my rock, now felt like a stranger. His unwavering desire to help my sister, his insistence that we were doing the right thing, left me feeling more and more isolated. There were nights when I would turn away from him in bed, the distance between us growing by the hour. I couldn't help but wonder how we'd gotten here, how a mistake, one moment of poor judgment, had spiraled into this. The baby, the guilt, the anger. When my sister first arrived, she was quiet, almost too quiet, as if she was trying to make herself invisible. She barely spoke to me, and I couldn't bring myself to start the conversation. What could I say to her? How could I look her in the eye after everything that had happened? It felt like the space between us had become insurmountable. I could barely bring myself to be near her, let alone share a meal or a conversation. But then slowly, she started to open up. It started with little things, telling me about the doctor's appointments, the morning sickness, the decisions she had to make about the baby's future. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. One evening, her voice barely above a whisper, we were sitting on the couch, the room dimly lit, and for the first time, I saw her vulnerability. She wasn't the confident, carefree girl I'd known. She was scared. Scared of becoming a mother. Scared of the unknown future. Scared of being judged by the world. Her confession shattered the ice between us. It was clear that she wasn't just seeking my forgiveness. She was seeking my understanding. I wanted to reach out, to console her, but the resentment I felt toward her was still too fresh. I had to struggle against the urge to pull away. "You don't have to be alone in this," I finally said, my voice thick with emotion. "But this situation, our situation, it's not easy. I'm still trying to figure out what this means for me, for us." She nodded silently, her face a mixture of guilt and hope. I could see the burden she carried on her shoulders, and for the first time, I began to understand the depth of the pressure she was under. But understanding her pain didn't make the betrayal any easier to bear. In the days that followed, I tried to keep my distance from my husband. The more I saw him take charge of everything, from the doctor's appointments to the baby planning, the more I felt like a third wheel in my own life. He was always there, offering solutions, making decisions, trying to reassure my sister, and yet, it felt like he was avoiding me. We hadn't had a real conversation since that night. The more I thought about it, the more it became clear. My husband hadn't just made a mistake, he'd made a choice. And now, that choice was changing everything. I couldn't ignore the way he was acting around me. There was a guilt in his eyes, a quiet desperation to make things right. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. He wasn't the man I had married anymore. He wasn't the same man who used to laugh with me at the kitchen table, who'd hold my hand as we walked through the park. Now, every glance, every touch, felt like it was infused with an unspoken apology, and it hurt. Then came the day I found the note. I had just finished cleaning the kitchen when I noticed it lying on the counter, a crumpled piece of paper with my husband's handwriting on it. I unfolded it, feeling a wave of anxiety wash over me. It was a list of things for the baby, but the last line of the note made my heart skip a beat. "Let's make this work for everyone. We'll be a family, and we can raise this child together." I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The implication was clear. He wasn't just talking about helping my sister. He was talking about bringing her into our family. He was talking about us raising this child together. Him, me, my sister, and the baby. The words seemed to blur on the page as my hand shook. Couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't just about helping my sister anymore. It was about something much bigger. My husband's proposal, that we raise this child, that we be a family in a way I hadn't signed up for, felt like a violation of everything I had believed in. How was I supposed to accept this new reality? Was I supposed to just accept that my sister would be a part of our lives in a way that went beyond the usual boundaries of family? When I confronted him later that evening, the conversation quickly spiraled out of control. "What does that mean?" I asked him, my voice trembling with frustration. "Are you saying you want her to be a part of this family in every way? That we raise this child as our own?" He looked at me, his expression torn. "I don't know, but I think it's the right thing to do. She's family. She's carrying my child." "That's not the point," I snapped. "The point is that you crossed a line. You betrayed me. You betrayed us. And now you want to act like everything is fine, like we're all going to play house and pretend this never happened?" He stepped back, his face full of guilt and regret. "I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want any of this. But I'm trying to do what's right." I took a deep breath, struggling to control my emotions. "You've already made your choice. Now I have to make mine." In that moment, it was clear that this wasn't just about forgiving him. It was about whether or not I could move forward with this new version of our life. Could I accept the idea of my sister becoming more than just a guest in our home? Could I accept that my husband wanted to raise a child that wasn't even mine? Or was this a line that couldn't be crossed? The questions lingered, unanswered, as the tension between us continued to grow. The night the truth finally hit me, I couldn't breathe. The weight of it crushed me. The realization that my life, my family, was no longer what I thought it was. It wasn't just the pregnancy anymore. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was everything. The compromises, the hidden truths, the decisions made in the quiet of the night that I hadn't seen until now. It all came to a head that evening when my husband asked me to sit down and have a real conversation. He had been pushing for it for weeks, and I had been avoiding it, hoping the tension would somehow dissolve on its own. But I knew better now. There was no way out of this. No way to pretend it wasn't happening. He sat across from me, his hands folded nervously in his lap, and I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "I know this has been hard for you," he began, his voice tight. "I know I've made mistakes, and I've hurt you. But I'm trying, okay? I'm trying to do what's best for everyone. For you. For her. For the baby. But I need you to understand something." I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest. "What's that?" He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "I love you, but I'm not sure I can live with myself if I don't do everything I can to help my sister. I can't turn my back on her, on the child. I can't." His words hit me like a slap across the face. It wasn't the first time he had said something similar, but now, in this moment, it felt like a final declaration. He wasn't just offering to help. He was choosing her, choosing this life that I couldn't be a part of. And in that instant, I realized how much I had been holding on to. A marriage, a vision of a family that no longer existed. My voice shook as I responded. "You're choosing her over me. You're choosing this mess. This lie, over what we've built, over us." He flinched, but his eyes were resolute. "I'm not choosing her over you. I'm trying to fix this. I'm trying to be a man you can still love." The irony of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. He wasn't being the man I needed him to be. The man I married, the one who promised to be there through thick and thin, was now standing in front of me, choosing to raise a child with another woman, his sister, while still hoping I would stay by his side. I stood up suddenly, my breath coming in sharp gasps. "I can't do this anymore." My voice cracked as I fought back tears. "I can't pretend that everything is okay. I can't be the person who just lets this happen. You can't ask me to forgive you. You can't ask me to stay, to pretend that nothing's changed." His face fell, a flicker of panic crossing his features. "Please don't leave. Don't give up on us." "I'm not giving up on us," I spat, almost through gritted teeth. "You did that. You gave up on us the moment you decided that your sister and her child mattered more than your wife. I'm not going to play the role of the dutiful wife anymore while you walk all over me." I turned away, the words spilling out of me before I even had the chance to stop them. I knew they were raw, painful, and unkind, but I didn't care. They were the truth. The truth that had been buried inside me, festering for weeks. He reached out for me, his voice pleading now. "Please. Please, I need you. We need you." But I couldn't stay. Not now. Not like this. I left that night. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't be in that house any longer. I couldn't breathe in the same air as him and my sister, not when everything was so broken. I grabbed my bag, slammed the door behind me, and didn't look back. I drove aimlessly for hours, the tears blurring my vision, my thoughts racing. I couldn't understand how I had let myself get to this point. How had I become the woman who walked away from the man she had promised to spend forever with? How had he become someone I didn't even recognize? But deep down, I knew the answer. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It wasn't just about my husband's affair with my sister. It was about something bigger, something that I had to confront alone. I wasn't going to let my life be dictated by other people's choices. I couldn't fix this. I couldn't save him. I could only save myself. And in that moment, as I sat alone in my car, I realized something that took me completely by surprise. For the first time in a long time, I was free. Free to make my own decisions. Free to choose my own path. Free to live without the weight of someone else's mistakes holding me down. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace settle in my chest. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but I was ready to face whatever came next, on my own terms. The days that followed were a blur of uncertainty and heartache, but also a strange sense of clarity that I hadn't anticipated. I stayed with a friend for a few days, trying to piece together what had happened, what was next. Every conversation I had with my husband felt like a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. He called, texted, begged me to come home, to talk things through. But the more he reached out, the more I realized that I needed space. Not just from him, but from everything. From the life we had built. From the expectations that had bound me to him and to this family that felt like it no longer belonged to me. It wasn't easy. It wasn't even fair. But in those first few days of distance, I learned something profound. I didn't need him to feel whole. I didn't need to be his anchor or his savior. I could be my own person, stand on my own 2 feet, and create the future I deserved. One that didn't revolve around betrayal, guilt, or unfinished apologies. But it wasn't all as simple as walking away and moving on. There were the moments when my sister, who had remained eerily silent after that night, reached out. She called me, leaving voicemails that were filled with apologies and broken promises. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she cried. "I'm so sorry. I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to respond to her at first. How could I?" She was my sister, the person I'd shared everything with, the person who had broken my trust in the most unimaginable way. And yet, I couldn't help but feel that familiar sense of love, the kind that comes from growing up beside someone and watching them become someone you barely recognize, for better or worse. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I told her one afternoon, after gathering enough courage to face her call. "But I need space. You need space. We need to figure out who we are now, separate from all of this." She didn't argue. In fact, I think she understood. The weight of everything had hit her too. But what I realized, in that moment, was that forgiveness would come. Not because I had to, but because eventually I wanted to. But I wasn't ready for it yet, and that was okay. As for my husband, things remained uncertain. He gave me the space I needed, but it wasn't long before he showed up at my friend's house. His face a mix of desperation and hope. I knew he was waiting for me to say something, to make a decision. But all I had was silence. "Do you love me?" he asked, the question hanging between us like an unspoken plea. I couldn't answer right away. How could I? My heart was still, raw from everything, and the idea of moving forward with him seemed like an impossible dream. I didn't know if love alone was enough to repair what had been broken. But what I did know, with a certainty that I hadn't felt in a long time, was that I needed time. Time to rebuild myself. Time to decide whether he could truly be the man I needed him to be, or if this was a relationship that had already run its course. "I don't know," I said softly, the words coming out heavier than I had intended. "I need time to figure that out. I can't give you an answer right now." He didn't push me. He didn't try to convince me to come back home. He simply nodded, as if he understood that this was my journey, not his. And for the first time, In what felt like forever, I felt the weight of the past few weeks, of the betrayal, the hurt, the anger, begin to lift, just a little. Days turned into weeks, and as I took my time, I began to realize that I wasn't as lost as I had once felt. I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. Slowly, but surely, I started to rebuild. Not just my relationship with my sister, or even with my husband, but with myself. I took up new hobbies. I spent time with friends. I took walks through the park and breathed in the fresh air, feeling the weight of the world get a little lighter with each step. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt. Still nights when I would lie awake thinking about what might have been. But I was starting to understand that healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about finding peace with it. About understanding that, even though things could never go back to the way they were, I could still move forward. I could still live a life that was mine. As for my husband and sister, we stayed in contact. Slowly, we began to rebuild the bridges that had burned so brightly. My husband continued to give me space, but there were small moments of tenderness, glimmers of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. My sister, though we had our awkward moments, began to show signs of growth, of truly reflecting on the impact of her actions. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, that felt enough. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I knew I had the strength to face it. And maybe, just maybe, I would find my way back to love, in whatever form it took. But for now, I was at peace with where I was. The next chapter would begin when I was ready to turn the page. As I stood in front of the mirror that evening, looking at the woman who had emerged from the storm, I realized something important. I had come through the fire. I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked away from my husband and sister. The woman who had once been consumed by hurt and betrayal was now a woman who understood her own strength. I had learned the hard way that true healing doesn't come from waiting for someone else to fix things. It comes from learning to stand on your own, from owning your story and choosing your path, no matter how difficult it may be. The future was still uncertain. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what would happen with my husband or my sister, or whether we would ever find our way back to each other in the way we had been. But for the first time, I was okay with that. I was no longer afraid of the unknown. I had found peace, not in forgiveness or in forgetting, but in the acceptance that some things can't be fixed. Some things just have to be lived with. And as I stepped away from the mirror, a sense of quiet resolve settled in me. The road ahead would be mine to walk, and I was ready to face it. Stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to create a life that was truly my own. Whatever came next, I knew I would be okay. Because now, for the first time in a long time, I was finally living for myself, and that was all I needed to begin again.